On a planet far away, in a galaxy full of stars and unknown worlds, lived an alien queen named Araxina. She was once the ruler of a great and powerful empire, but her world had been torn apart by war. Years ago, her enemies took her child away. Araxina had never stopped searching for her daughter. Her heart ached every day, not knowing if her child was alive or lost forever. The queen had traveled through countless worlds, searched through old ruins, and met many strange beings. But there was no sign of her child. Felt like the universe was vast, and her hope was small. Araxina's ship, a huge and shining vessel, roamed the skies like a lonely star. She never felt at peace, not since the day she lost her daughter. She had sent messages across the stars, begging for anyone who had seen her child to come forward. But the replies were few, and none of them led to her precious daughter. On a quiet, peaceful world in a far corner of the galaxy, there was a simple human farmer named Jacob. His life was far from anything extraordinary. Jacob lived with his wife, Sarah, and their son Tommy. They lived on a small farm, growing crops and raising animals. They did not have much, but they had each other. That was enough for them. Jacob spent his days in the fields, working hard to make sure his family was well fed and safe. Sarah helped him with the chores, and Tommy, their young son, played outside, always curious and full of energy. Family had everything they needed, but they were far from rich. Still, they were happy in their little corner of the world, far away from the dangers and troubles of the galaxy. Little did they know, their lives were about to change forever. One afternoon, as Jacob was working in the fields, Tommy ran up to him, his face full of excitement. "Dad, Dad!" Tommy shouted, waving his arms wildly. "Found something, come quick!" Jacob wiped the sweat from his brow and followed his son to the edge of the woods. The trees stood tall and quiet, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze. Tommy led the way, his small feet moving fast through the tall grass. He stopped near a thick tree and pointed to something on the ground. Jacob knelt down beside his son and looked at what Tommy had found. It was a small, glowing pod, half buried in the earth. The pod was smooth and shiny, with strange markings all over it. It didn't look like anything Jacob had ever seen before. It wasn't from their world, he knew that much. He glanced at Tommy, who was already looking at the pod with wide eyes filled with wonder. "What is it, Dad?" Tommy asked, his voice full of curiosity. Jacob reached out and gently touched the pod. The surface was warm, almost alive. As his fingers brushed against it, the pod began to open slowly, making a soft hissing sound. Inside there was a small figure wrapped in strange, glowing fabric. The child inside was unlike anything Jacob had seen before. She had pale, almost glowing skin, and her long hair shimmered like starlight. Her eyes were closed, but her face looked peaceful, as if she were only sleeping. Jacob felt a chill run down his spine as he realized this was no ordinary child. He looked around, feeling a sense of unease. Where had this child come from? Who left her here? "Tommy, get back," Jacob said softly, his voice filled with concern. He carefully picked up the child from the pod. She was light, almost weightless, and her skin was soft and smooth to the touch. He looked at her for a long moment, trying to figure out what to do. Tommy watched in awe. "Is she... Is she an angel?" he whispered, his eyes full of wonder. Jacob shook his head. "I don't know, but we need to take her inside." He hurried back to the house with the child in his arms. As soon as he entered, Sarah looked up from her work and gasped when she saw the small figure in Jacob's arms. "Where did you find her?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with concern. Jacob explained quickly, telling her about the glowing pod and the child he had found. Sarah knelt down beside him, looking at the child with a mix of wonder and worry. She gently touched the child's hand, feeling the warmth that seemed to radiate from her. "I've never seen anything like this," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "What do we do?" Jacob thought for a moment. "Take care of her. She's here now, and we can't leave her out there." They decided to keep the child hidden for the time being. There was something about her that felt both magical and dangerous. Jacob didn't understand what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure: this child was important. The next morning, as Jacob and Sarah were tending to their farm, they noticed something strange. There was a disturbance in the sky, something big and bright moving in the distance. It was like a shooting star, but it didn't burn out. It was too big and too fast. It seemed to be heading toward their planet. Jacob's heart skipped a beat as he watched the streak of light move across the sky. Whatever it was coming closer, and he had a sinking feeling that their peaceful life was about to change forever. The quiet life that Jacob and Sarah had enjoyed for so long was about to be shattered. That evening, as the sun began to set, a strange rumbling shook the ground. Jacob and Sarah exchanged worried glances, unsure of what was happening. Mommy ran out from the house, his eyes wide with fear. "Mom, Dad, look," he cried, pointing up at the sky. Jacob and Sarah turned, and what they saw took their breath away. A huge, glowing shape was streaking across the sky, faster than anything they had ever seen. It was like a fireball, but it didn't burn out. It was too large and too controlled. The object grew larger as it descended, and it seemed to be heading straight for their farm. Panic rushed through Jacob's chest. "Get inside," he shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand. The family ran toward the house, and Jacob looked up at the object, which was now so close it seemed like it would crash right into them. It was unlike any ship he had ever seen. It looked smooth, metallic, and sleek, like a weapon designed for war. The ship hovered above the ground, casting an enormous shadow over their house. Jacob's heart raced as he watched it slowly lower to the ground, a deep hum coming from it. The air felt thick with tension, and everything around them seemed to freeze. Then, the ship's door opened with a loud hiss, and a figure stepped out. At first Jacob couldn't see who it was, but then the figure stepped into the light, and his breath caught in his throat. The woman who emerged from the ship was unlike any person Jacob had ever seen. She was tall, with an otherworldly presence. Her skin glowed faintly, and her long hair flowed like liquid silver. She wore a flowing robe that shimmered with strange symbols. Her eyes were a piercing shade of violet, and they were full of sadness and anger. She was beautiful, but there was something cold and intimidating about her. She stood tall, with a regal aura that made Jacob feel small in comparison. This was no ordinary woman. Jacob knew she wasn't from their world, but what she wanted he couldn't begin to imagine. Tommy tugged at Jacob's arm. "Who is she?" "Dad, I don't know," Jacob whispered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Stay inside, Tommy." But Tommy, ever curious, didn't listen. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the mysterious woman. The alien queen's gaze shifted to the house, and to Jacob and Sarah. There was a moment of stillness. Before she spoke in a voice that was both soft and commanding, "I have come for the child," she said, her words heavy with emotion. Jacob's stomach dropped. He looked at Sarah, who was just as confused as he was. "What child?" Jacob asked, his voice shaky. The queen's eyes narrowed. She stepped closer, her presence like an invisible force pressing down on them. "The one you have taken. She is mine." Jacob's mind raced. He didn't understand what was happening. The child they had found in the pod was nothing but an innocent girl, no older than Tommy. But the way this woman spoke, it was as if she had every right to claim her. "I don't know what you're talking about," Jacob said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. "We found her. She was alone." The queen's face softened slightly, her eyes flicking toward the house. Jacob could see the sadness in her gaze now, mixed with a deep longing. For a moment she seemed almost human. "She is my daughter," the queen whispered, barely audible. "She was taken from me many years ago, and I have searched for her across the stars. She is all I have left." Jacob's heart clenched. He had no idea who this woman was or where she came from, but he could see the pain in her eyes. For a brief second he wondered if he could just hand the girl over to her. But then, the thought of losing Tommy, of giving up the child who had brought so much joy to their lives, brought a deep sadness he couldn't ignore. "No," Jacob said firmly. "She's part of our family now. She's our responsibility." The queen's eyes flared with anger. "You do not understand," she said, her voice growing cold again. "She is not yours to keep. You do not know what she means to me." "Us." Sarah stepped forward, her face filled with determination. We don't know what's going on here, but that child is safe with us. We'll not let you take her without a reason." The queen's gaze flicked towards Sarah. For a moment, there was a flash of something in her eyes, surprise, perhaps, or even respect. But it quickly vanished, replaced by the cold mask of a queen. "I will not leave without her," the queen said, her tone final. "You will hand her over." Jacob knew this wasn't going to end peacefully. The alien woman was powerful, and there was no way they could fight her. But he couldn't just give up the child. He couldn't let her go without understanding why she was so important to this woman. "She's only a child," Jacob said softly. "She's innocent. She doesn't belong in whatever this is." The queen's face softened for a moment, and her gaze shifted toward the child inside. "I never wanted this for her," she whispered. "But I will do anything to keep her safe, even if that means taking her away from you." Jacob stood his ground, but deep inside, he felt something shift. This wasn't just a battle over a child. It was a battle between two worlds, two lives. Two destinies that were on a crash course with each other as the sun set behind them. Casting long shadows over the farm, Jacob knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning of something far bigger than they could have ever imagined. The queen stood tall, her piercing violet eyes fixed on Jacob and Sarah. Her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. She had found her daughter, the one she had been searching for across countless galaxies. The pain of years lost without her, the endless nights spent in despair, had all led to this moment. Yet, as she looked at the small family before her, she realized that the child, whom she once hoped to hold close, had already found a home. Jacob's words echoed in her mind. "She's part of our family now. She's our responsibility." There was an unexpected warmth in those words, a tenderness that made her heart ache. This human family had done what she had been unable to do for years. They had cared for her daughter, given her a home, and loved her. But it wasn't enough. The queen couldn't give up her daughter, not after everything she had endured. The child was the key to saving her people, her empire. Without her, the queen's reign would fall into ruin, and the galaxy would slip further into chaos. She had fought too long, too hard, to let her go now. "I don't understand," Jacob said, his voice calm but firm. "Why do you need her so badly? What does she mean to you?" The queen's expression softened for a moment. There was so much Jacob didn't understand, so much that had been hidden from him. The child, though innocent in her human life, carried the bloodline of an entire species. Her existence was tied to the survival of an empire, to the future of millions of lives. But could she truly explain this to Jacob and Sarah? Would they ever understand the importance of what was at stake? "She is the heir to my throne," the queen said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She is the last of my bloodline, the last hope for my people." Jacob's brow furrowed. "Your throne? Your people?" His confusion deepened. He had no idea what she was talking about. All he knew was that the girl had become part of his family. She was more than just an heir to some distant throne. She was their daughter. The queen took a slow, deep breath. The weight of the galaxy seemed to rest on her shoulders. "Yes, I am the ruler of an empire. I am its queen, but I have lost everything. My home, my army, my people, everything was taken from me. My enemies destroyed everything I loved. Only my daughter remains. She holds the future of my people in her blood." Sarah stepped forward, her eyes filled with determination. "I understand that you've lost a lot. She's not some pawn in your battle. She's a child. She's part of our family now. You can't just take her." The queen's gaze shifted to the child inside the house, her eyes full of longing. The girl was so young, so innocent. She had no idea of the weight she carried. But to the queen, she was the last piece of a shattered world. "I don't want to take her from you," the queen said softly. "I never wanted this, but I have no choice. Without her, my people will perish. Without her, I will lose everything." Jacob's heart ached for the queen, saw the deep pain in her eyes, the years of loss that had shaped her. But still, he couldn't let go of what he had. The child, his daughter now, had become part of their world. He couldn't just hand her over without understanding why. He looked at Sarah, who stood beside him, her face a mix of worry and resolve. "We can't just give her up," Jacob said quietly, "not without knowing what this means for her, for all of us." The queen seemed to consider this for a long moment. Her gaze remained fixed on the house, where the child slept peacefully, wanted to rush forward, to claim her daughter, to explain the weight of her responsibility. But she knew that it wasn't enough. She couldn't just ask for the child. To leave this family without showing them the truth of what they were facing. "I understand your hesitation," the queen said finally. "But you need to understand this. The fate of my people is in your hands now. If she stays with you, my enemies will find her. They will come for her, and they will destroy everything in their path. There will be no peace for any of us." Jacob's stomach twisted at her words. He hadn't thought of that. He'd been so focused on protecting the child that he hadn't considered the dangers she might bring. The world he knew could be shattered in an instant if the wrong people learned of her existence. "We'll protect her," Jacob said, his voice firm. "We've protected her so far, but we can't do it alone. We don't know what kind of enemies you have or what they're capable of." The queen's eyes softened, just for a moment. "I will stay with you then," she said. "For now I will help you. I can teach you how to defend her, how to protect her from those who seek to harm her. But in the end, the choice will be hers." Jacob looked at Sarah, who nodded in agreement. They had no other choice. They had to trust the queen, at least. "For now, then we'll work together," Jacob said. "But you have to promise me something. It'll help us understand what's going on. You'll tell us everything." The queen nodded slowly, her expression hardening once more. "I will, but know this. Time is running out. The longer she stays here, the more danger she's in." With that, the queen turned and walked toward the house, her presence filling the space like a heavy storm. Jacob and Sarah followed, unsure of what the future held. But one thing was certain, their world would never be the same again. Inside, the child stirred in her sleep, blissfully unaware of the choices and struggles that lay ahead. The queen stood over her, her heart heavy with the weight of the galaxy. She had come to take her daughter home, but now she wasn't sure where home truly was. The days passed slowly, each one filled with the heavy weight of uncertainty. The queen, who had once ruled over a vast empire, now found herself in a strange and unfamiliar place. The farm was quiet, peaceful, but it wasn't her home, where she belonged. Yet as she looked at the child, the girl who had become part of this family, a part of her heart softened. This wasn't what she had planned. This wasn't how she imagined finding her daughter again. The child, who had once been lost to the stars, was now living with humans. She was safe, loved, and growing more comfortable with each passing day. Her presence brought a sense of calm that the queen had not felt in years. But the queen knew the truth. The child wasn't hers in the way she had once imagined. She wasn't just a daughter to claim. She was a person who had formed her own bond with the family who had taken her in. Jacob and Sarah had done everything they could to protect her. They treated the child with kindness and care, and over time the girl had started to feel at home. She played with Tommy, their son, and learned about the world she had been hidden from. But as the days passed, she began to notice something was different. There was a strange tension in the air whenever the queen was around. The queen was kind to her, but the girl could feel the sadness in her eyes, the desperation in her voice whenever she spoke of returning to her home. One evening, after the sun had set and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, the child found herself sitting by the window. She could hear the queen and Jacob talking in the next room, their voices low and tense. She didn't understand everything they said, but she could feel the weight of the conversation. The queen had made it clear that she wanted the child to return with her, to leave the farm and join her as her rightful heir. But the girl wasn't so sure anymore. She didn't want to hurt anyone, especially the family who had given her so much. Tommy, who had always been the curious one, had noticed his sister sitting alone. He walked over and sat beside her, his small hand reaching out to hers. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft and gentle. The girl looked at him, unsure of what to say. She had come to care for Tommy like a brother, and part of her didn't want to leave him. "I don't know," she whispered. Feel torn. Tommy tilted his head, trying to understand. Torn. She nodded, her eyes filled with confusion. The Queen. She says I have to go with her. She says I'm important, that my people need me. But I don't want to leave you. I don't want to leave. ... this. Tommy smiled and squeezed her hand. But you can stay if you want to. We don't want you to go either. The words felt like a warm blanket, comforting her. The Queen had made it clear that her daughter's future was tied to her people's survival, but the girl didn't understand. Why she had to choose between her old life and the family that had given her everything? She didn't want to hurt anyone. She didn't want to make a choice that would cause pain. As the night grew darker, the girl slipped outside, hoping to find some quiet space to think. The cool night air wrapped around her like a gentle hug. She looked up at the stars, wondering if her people were out there, if they were still searching for her. But as she stared at the vast sky, she realized something important. The stars were far away, and the family who had raised her, who had given her a home, were right in front of her. The Queen found her by the edge of the woods, standing alone in the darkness. She had been searching for the child, hoping to speak with her, to explain why she had come. But when she saw the girl standing there, her shoulders slumped in thought. The Queen knew this wasn't going to be easy. I know what you're thinking, the Queen said softly, her voice full of emotion. You don't want to hurt them. You don't want to leave. The girl turned, meeting the Queen's gaze. Her heart was heavy with the truth that was growing inside her. I don't know what to do. I love them. I love this family. She paused, tears welling up in her eyes. But I don't want to leave you either. You're my mother. The Queen's heart broke at the words. She had spent so long searching, hoping, and now that she had her daughter in front of her, she realized something she had never expected. The girl had grown up with love and care from these people, but the Queen had not been there for her, had not been able to provide that love. The girl had made a life for herself, one that was full of happiness and belonging. The Queen took a step forward, her voice filled with both sadness and understanding. You don't have to choose. Not yet. I came here because I believed it was my duty to bring you back. But I can see now that you found something that I couldn't give you. And that's a gift. The girl's eyes widened. You mean, I don't have to leave? The Queen shook her head. Not unless you choose to. You are free to choose your path. You can stay here with them and live your life. I can't force you to come with me. The girl looked at the Queen, her eyes, searching for some sign that this wasn't just a dream. But what about your people? What about your kingdom? The Queen looked up at the stars, her heart heavy with the weight of her people's future. They will have to find another way. I will not take you from the life you've made for yourself. You are not my possession. You are my daughter. And no matter what happens, I will always love you. Tears streamed down the girl's face as she stepped forward, hugging the Queen tightly. For the first time, the Queen felt the full weight of what it meant to be a mother, not just a ruler. And in that moment, she knew that whatever choice her daughter made, it would be the right one. The days following the Queen's conversation with the child were filled with tension and uncertainty. The Queen had come to terms with the fact that her daughter had made her choice. She had chosen to stay with the family who had raised her, and the Queen would respect that. But even as the Queen found some peace in her daughter's decision, there were darker forces closing in. The enemies who had once taken the child and the ones who sought to use her for their own gain were still out there. They had not forgotten her, and they were willing to do whatever it took to find her again. Jacob had no idea how dangerous the situation had become. He thought that by keeping the child safe, by hiding her away on their peaceful farm, he had shielded her from the dangers of the outside world. But he soon realized that there was no hiding from the forces that had been hunting her. The Queen, once a powerful ruler of a vast empire, now found herself facing enemies who were as relentless as the stars. One night, as the wind howled outside and the moon cast its pale light over the land, Jacob heard a loud noise from outside. He rushed to the door and found the Queen standing in the middle of the yard, her posture tense and her eyes scanning the horizon. She had a strange, almost distant look in her eyes. "What's going on?" Jacob asked, his voice filled with concern. The Queen didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared into the distance, as if sensing something. Then she turned to him, her expression serious. "They're coming. The ones who took her before, they've found us." Jacob's heart sank. He had known that the situation wasn't as simple as it seemed, but he hadn't been prepared for the truth to come so soon. "What do we do?" The Queen's face was hard with determination. "We fight, we protect her, no matter what. I can teach you how to defend this place. I can teach you how to fight." Jacob's hands clenched into fists. He was just a farmer. He didn't know how to fight, let alone protect against an army. But seeing the Queen's calm resolve, he realized that he had no choice. He couldn't let these enemies take the child. He couldn't let them destroy the life they had built. "We'll do it together," Jacob said, his voice steady. "I don't know what you're capable of, but I'll do whatever it takes to keep my family safe." The Queen nodded, a hint of respect in her eyes. "I know. I've seen what you're capable of already. You've protected her when I couldn't. Now it's time to stand together." The next few days were spent preparing for the worst. The Queen trained Jacob in the basics of combat, using the skills she had learned in battle. She taught him how to defend himself, how to use his surroundings to his advantage, and how to anticipate an enemy's moves. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Sarah, too, helped prepare the house, reinforcing the doors and windows, and making sure they had enough food and supplies to last in case of a siege. The child, who had been so unsure about the situation, now understood the danger. She stayed close to Jacob and Sarah, knowing that her choice to stay with them had made them all targets. But even though she was scared, she trusted that they would protect her. The night finally came when the first signs of danger appeared. The sky was dark, and the air was thick with the scent of rain. A low rumble echoed across the land, and Jacob felt his heart race. He stepped outside, his eyes scanning the trees, waiting for any sign of the enemy. "Stay inside," the Queen instructed, her voice sharp. "Do not come out unless I tell you." Jacob nodded, and the child, clinging to Sarah, stayed close to the door. The Queen moved to the edge of the yard, her eyes sharp as she watched the horizon. A cold wind blew through the trees, and Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. And then it came. A group of shadowy figures appeared on the edge of the field, moving quickly and silently like predators stalking their prey. Jacob's blood ran cold as he realized who they were. They were not just ordinary soldiers. These were the ones who had taken the child all those years ago. Eyes were cold, their faces masked in darkness, and they moved with purpose. "Get back," the Queen shouted, her voice filled with authority. She stepped forward, her hands raised in the air, and the soldiers hesitated for a moment. Jacob could see the tension in the air, thick and heavy. "We want the child," one of the soldiers said, his voice low and threatening. "Hand her over, and we will leave you in peace." "No," the Queen said firmly, her eyes filled with determination. "You will not have her. She's mine to protect." A tense silence hung between the two groups. Jacob, who had never been in such a situation before, felt a surge of fear. But he also felt something else, a deep, protective instinct. He wouldn't let these strangers take the child. He would fight for her, for his family. The Queen moved quickly, her hand raising in the air as she summoned a burst of energy from her ship's technology. The ground beneath the soldiers' feet trembled, and the earth seemed to crack and shift. The soldiers flinched, but they didn't retreat. Instead, they raised their weapons, ready to fight. Jacob didn't wait. He grabbed a nearby wooden plank and swung it at the first soldier he could reach. His strike was wild, but it caught the soldier off guard. The soldier staggered back, surprised by Jacob's strength. The Queen's powers had taught him more. Then he realized the battle was on. For the next few hours, they fought. Jacob and Sarah, with the Queen's guidance, held their ground. It wasn't easy. The soldiers were trained, and they had the advantage of numbers. But the Queen fought with a fury that was unmatched, her every move precise and powerful. She was a force to be reckoned with. Jacob knew they had a chance because of her. But as the night stretched on, the realization hit him. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for the future of the child, the future of the Queen's people, and the future of their family. In the end, they pushed the soldiers back. The queen's strength and Jacob's determination had made the difference. The attackers retreated, but Jacob knew they would be back. The fight was far from over. The farm was quiet again, but the calm was only temporary. After the battle with the enemy soldiers, Jacob and Sarah worked tirelessly to rebuild and secure their home. The queen, though powerful, had pushed herself to her limits, and she needed time to recover. The soldiers they had fought off were only the first wave, and the queen knew it. They had not seen the last of them. She could feel it deep within her. Jacob stood on the porch, looking out at the fields that stretched beyond the house. The night sky was clear, and the stars above seemed to shimmer with an unsettling brilliance. Wasn't sure how much longer they could keep up this fight. The world outside was closing in on them, and he had no idea how much longer they could hold out. But the queen had made it clear this was only the beginning. "Are you sure you can't do more?" Jacob asked, his voice filled with concern. He turned to the queen, who was standing silently beside him, her face solemn as she gazed at the horizon. Is there no other way to end this? To stop them? The queen's violet eyes were filled with a deep, hidden sorrow. She had spent so many years fighting, so many years alone. And now that she had finally found her daughter, the battle was still far from over. She had known this would come. She had known the cost. But it didn't make it any easier. The only way to stop them is to confront them head on, the queen replied quietly. And to do that, I'll have to make a sacrifice. Jacob looked at her confused. What do you mean, a sacrifice? What are you talking about? The queen turned her gaze to the child, who was playing outside with Tommy. The girl had been through so much, and yet she had found joy in a world she never knew. Jacob could see the bond between them. The queen's heart ached as she watched her daughter. Knowing the decision she had to make would change everything. I can't protect her forever, the queen said softly. I can't keep hiding from them. They will keep coming until they get what they want. Jacob felt a pang of fear. He had no idea what the queen was planning, but he could sense the urgency in her voice. He stepped closer to her. What are you saying? We can fight back together. We can find another way. The queen shook her head, her expression full of sorrow. You don't understand. The sacrifice I'm talking about isn't just mine, too. Make it involves the child. If I give myself to them, they will stop chasing her. They will see that I've given up my claim to her, and they will leave her in peace. She will be free. Jacob felt his heart stop. No, he said, his voice shaking. You can't be serious. You're talking about sacrificing yourself. For her, you don't have to do that. There has to be another way. The queen turned to face him, her eyes full of pain but also resolve. This is the only way. My people need a leader, and I am the only one left. If I give myself to them, they will stop the war. They will stop hunting her. She will be safe. Jacob's hands clenched into fists. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't let the queen sacrifice herself like this. She'd already given up. So much for her people. She had already lost so much. How could she possibly ask for more? No, Jacob said firmly. You're not doing this. You've already done enough. We'll find another way. We'll fight together. We'll protect her. Protect all of us. The queen's face softened, and for the first time, Jacob saw the vulnerability beneath her strong exterior. You don't understand. I've already lost everything. My people, my world, ... They're gone. But if I give myself to them, I can stop it. I can end the war. I can give her a chance at a life, a future where she doesn't have to fight, where she doesn't have to carry the burden of my kingdom. Jacob's throat tightened. The queen's words cut through him like a knife. He knew she was right, but he couldn't accept it. He couldn't let her do this. He looked at the child again, who was laughing with Tommy, her innocence shining through. He couldn't let her lose everything again, especially not after finding a place to belong. I won't let you do this, Jacob said, his voice more determined than ever. I don't care what it takes. We'll figure something out. Together, the queen looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. She had never expected to find someone like Jacob, someone willing to fight to protect, no matter the cost. ... Even as she appreciated his resolve, she knew the truth. Her choice had already been made. You don't have a choice, she said gently. This is the only way to end it. To end the pain, the fighting, the loss, the only way for her to have the life she deserves. Jacob felt tears sting his eyes. He couldn't fight her anymore. She had made up her mind, and no matter what he said, nothing would change it. He knew the queen was right. This was her destiny. But it didn't make the thought of losing her any easier. I won't let you go alone, Jacob said, his voice thick with emotion. Whatever happens, we're with you. We won't leave you. We're a family. The queen smiled softly, her heart aching. She had never known a family like this. She had never known love like this. The time for fighting had passed. Now, all that was left was the sacrifice. As the night wore on, the queen made her preparations. The soldiers would come soon, and she would have to give herself to them. It would be the only way to save her daughter. It's the only way to ensure that she could live the life she deserved. Jacob stood by her side, ready to face whatever came next. And in that moment, the queen realized something. She may have lost her empire, but she had gained something even more precious. She had gained a family.